Hello there, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program New Zealand Reborn, where I fully intended to release this video yesterday, but things happened. I can't really do anything about it, but that's okay, because we're jumping straight into the VAB to design our new multi-moon flyby tourist spacecraft to fly 2 tourists past the Mun and Minmus. We don't have any time to delay because the Indians and the Scandinavians are hot on our tail, and we need this extra money to get our Mun colonization efforts off the ground. So we're going to jump straight into it.
T-minus 17. Final guidance release. We'll expect engine ignition at 8.9 seconds. 10, 9,
8, 7, ignition sequence started. All engines are started. We have ignition. 2, 1, 0. We have a liftoff. We have a liftoff, and it's lighting up the area.
Days into the Ithil-8 mission, Mission Control receives an alert that a massive solar storm has broken out and is ravaging the space around Kerbin, unfortunately injecting Jebediah and his 2 passengers with near-lethal doses of radiation. There's no choice but to continue, and thankfully, the tourists only paid for their mission to the Mun. They didn't specify what condition they had to be in. Indeed, in all of his years of flying, I don't think Jebediah McLaughlin has ever had a re-entry as rough as that, but don't worry, because there's always room to overshadow that one in the future. We always have room for improvement. Regardless, Jebediah and both of his passengers are returned to the hospital to receive treatment for heavy radiation poisoning. Honestly, the doctors don't know how they're still alive, but we have a space program to run. We can't dilly-dally. We did discover an asteroid that is on a very close intercept course with Kerbin. Sorry, not intercept really, but it's coming very close to Kerbin, in fact. So we decide to take this golden opportunity, as we've been falling behind and failing several missions before this. We need to get ourselves back in the game. New Zealand needs to pull ahead. So we design a brand new mission called the Erebor 1. Erebor, of course, after the Lonely Mountain in the Hobbit franchise. And we're putting it on top of our brand new Callahan 1 booster, named, of course, after Sir Paul Terence Callahan, who was a New Zealand physicist and was the founding director of the McDermott Institute for Advanced Materials and Nanotechnology at Victoria University of Wellington. There's a bit of fun information for you about New Zealand. We are, of course, piloting this with our elite crew of Jeb, Bill, and Bob, so we spare no expense. Apparently, truly, it wouldn't be a real mission unless at least one Kerbal has a near-death experience, and a malfunction in Bob Hagen's EVA pack leaves him slowly drifting away from the capsule while in interplanetary space. He is now drifting away from Kerbin's sphere of influence, being the first Kerbal to achieve an EVA outside of Kerbin's influence, but also now having his life threatened. Jebediah, still in Erebor 1, takes control and starts drifting to try to rendezvous with Bob Hagens, who is drifting away slowly but at a consistent rate. It accidentally hits Bob on the way up, causing him to spin uncontrollably in the air, in the space rather, and it makes it even more difficult to get a successful rendezvous. Bob Hagens still holds on. He gathers his strength and attempts to reach out to the ladder. He grabs on just in the nick of time, leaving him very safe and willing to return back to Kerbin. These 5 Kerbals, Jeb, Bill, and Bob, in addition to the 2 tourists that were paying very high prices to go on this mission, are the first Kerbals to exit Kerbin's sphere of influence in history. And now they are finally on their way back to Kerbin, hopefully safe and sound. Though, understanding that, I think I mentioned it in the last video, their capsule with the lander can on the bottom, covered with a heat shield, it is not exactly rated for high-velocity re-entries, such as that from interplanetary space. So we have to end up actually dipping, not once, here's the second time, dipping into the atmosphere again to bleed off some of our speed. Skipping along, this is the second time, then we need to go around and skip for a third time off of the atmosphere. This is not the ideal way to do things, and it takes a lot of extra time, but there are no solar storms, so their radiation levels are, not as worrying as our last mission was, and they finally bleed off enough speed to enter the atmosphere proper, deploying the parachutes and letting them drift safely down to the surface of Kerbin, all 5 Kerbals in one piece and alive and well. Bob Hagens, of course, is a little bit shaken by the experience, but it's nothing that a lot of Kerbals won't ever experience ever again or haven't experienced before. If we remember Nicholas, his endeavor over the Mun and him drifting away from his capsule back on that mission. Anyway, we have an Eve transfer coming up, so we're going to put together a brand new state-of-the-art satellite with some new scientific experiments that we just researched for a contract to put a new satellite in orbit around Eve.
T-minus 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. We have a go for main engine start. 7, 6. We have main engine start. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. A new era for planetary science begins.
After all, it has been quite a hot minute since we last went to Eve. I believe the last mission was in late 1972. It is now late 1976. So we definitely have our share of new technology to experiment on the big purple planet. Not to say that there isn't another big purple planet, as the Outer Planets mod adds Nidon, which is also purple, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, yes, we're going to boost ourselves into an intercept with Eve and then fine-tune our orbit to get a nice encounter and fall into our directed orbit that the contract set the parameters for to gather science, and I will also set an alarm for later. Good morning, New Zealand. I'm Chandler Farmer with the Kerbin News Network, bringing you a breaking story as our sources confirm that the United Scandinavian Space Agency has just successfully launched a probe to Sarnus. The probe, named Horizon 1, was launched on board the USSA's new heavy-lift Ariane 6 launch vehicle late yesterday on day 389 of 1976. Beyond being the first Kerbal-made object to visit Sarnus, it is also the first spacecraft equipped with advanced ion propulsion technology that, so far, only the Scandinavians have been able to implement successfully. Horizon 1 is expected to arrive at Sarnus in early 1980 and will perform various experiments on the ringed gas giant and its moons. We'll continue to bring you updates on the latest space missions and more here on KNN. I'm Chandler Farmer. Glory to New Zealand. Well, certainly to our dismay, the Scandinavians seem to have gotten themselves a mission to Sarnas before even we did, and now New Zealand has to buckle down on its promise of getting a base on the moon. And the first step to achieving this, of course, is to design and launch a rover to the surface of the Mun. And this one, called the Shadowfax 1, launching on board a Barrett 2 rocket. This one is our workhorse for smaller missions to the Mun, of course. We've used this for all of our manned Mun missions. Yeah, so the rover, of course, is going to be used to scout out areas near the North Pole of the Mun, and it'll be able to roam around and do various experiments, possibly even helping to do ground analysis on the survey scanners that we're making, discovering ore deposits and different materials on the under the lunar surface, and this rover will allow us to more effectively tackle those situations. So we are already at the Mun, of course, burning to descend towards the surface of the pole, where we are hopefully going to set it down gently. And yeah, so this one took me it took a decent amount of time to design the rover. Our engineering team hasn't actually done this before, but we do actually put a record in the bag for having the first robotic rover on the surface of any planet. We thought for sure that the Scandinavians were going to beat us at this, but, never underestimate New Zealand. Here we're just burning our CS thrusters a little bit to get into the light a little more. And there we have a successful deployment of Shadowfax 1 onto the surface of the Mun. And there it will stay for several years, driving around, hopefully, and collecting science for our future colonization efforts. And the next mission, we have no time to waste. We are collaborating this time with the unlikely partner of Poland across the ocean. They have expressed their interest in collaborating with New Zealand to launch an asteroid detection probe into an orbit around the Sun just outside of Eve's orbit. And the contract here is going to also give us quite a lot of money to pay for all of these launches. The Callahan 1 booster will launch this mission called the Orzel Cosmosu, otherwise known as Sentinel in New Zealand. Yeah, Callahan 1s are quite pricey boosters, but they are becoming our workhorse for larger missions in general, lifting off of the surface there to deploy our new detection probe to orbit and get it transferred over to an orbit outside of Eve. The Sentinel one, I think we originally have to detect, 17 asteroids for one of the contracts, and then 3 comets for another one. It'll give us quite a big payout anyway. Zooming away from Kerbin there, this probe, the Orzel Cosmosu, aka Sentinel, is actually equipped with instruments capable of analyzing the sun more accurately than with any probe we have launched prior. That resource detection radar has a dual purpose of being able to analyze stuff on the sun. And of course, we will check back with this later to better refine the orbit. Until then, Tumuaki 1, our first mission to Jool, is still a stain on our reputation. So, we design a brand new Jool mission, Tumuaki 2, launched on board a Callahan 1 booster as well. This one is equipped with a nuclear engine, our answer to Scandinavia's invention of ion engines and their successful implementation is our first demonstration of nuclear engine technology, which has the potential to be extremely efficient and bring us to places that we have never gone before. The nuclear upper stage of Tumuaki 2 by itself, I believe, has 7,000, close to 7,000 meters per second of delta V, which is, especially combined with gravitational assists in the Jool system around its moons, is more than enough to get all around there and complete all the science we need from every single body in the Jool system. As a side note, I did some testing, and the nuclear reactors do actually work now. So this mission doesn't need solar panels on it. We just have some radiators and a nuclear reactor to get ourselves enough power to last the entire mission. So we set it on its course to intercept the sphere of influence of Lathe, and it will arrive at Jool in hopefully just over 2 years. Moving on, however, The people of New Zealand have certainly waited long enough. So, we are introducing the newest member of our elite astronaut force, Petrov Labratov, a young scientist hailing from the USSR and prepared to spend 5 years in lunar orbit helping to spearhead New Zealand's permanent expansion to the moon as we launch our first lunar space station, dubbed the Edoras Station.
And the countdown continues to go smoothly. Guidance release, T-minus 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. We have ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And we have a liftoff